The Phoenix Suns have absolutely ruined Devin Booker, and it's killing their season. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Let's take a look at what is going on in the desert. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about them Suns, though? Definitely up and down this year. I thought that they were going to be performing much better this year, but they've dealt with a lot of things like injuries to Durant, which is also really tanking their season. But a new head coach, some new guys in the roster, a lot of time to turn it around. But so far, right now, things aren't looking the best, is what I'll say.
So here's ESPN's report on Devin Booker and what's going on with him and the Suns. This is kind of a mess here. Maybe something people aren't paying enough attention to, but let's check this out. Here's Devin Booker.
Booker is an all-NBA type player, but Devin Booker this year is not playing like an all-NBA player here. He's shooting 43% from the field, down from 49% from last year. I think without Kevin Durant, this team is a lottery team. They're trending towards that way here, and they're so dependent on with Durant in the lineup here. And as you can see, the numbers here with Durant and without here, certainly a dip in Booker's production here. And Bradley Beal certainly been in and out of the lineup here, and I think they are so reliant on a KD. And if they have another Kevin Durant injury somewhere around the line here, that is going to be a huge blow.
This still
Are the Suns really a lottery team without KD, do you think?
Man,
even with Booker and Beal?
I'll say that the West is so competitive. That sounds outlandish just conceptually, but he may be onto something.
I think he might be right.
He may be onto something. That may be true. I don't know.
I wouldn't have thought it heading into the season, but and Bobby's a smart dude. That could be right. All right, let's see what else they have to say.
messes with my head, though, you guys, because Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, all-stars, why is it not working without KD? Perk, do you think it's like a personality issue on the team?
I don't know, but it's confusing to me, to be honest with you, because you look at those numbers, you would think right now we would have Devin Booker in the same conversation with the likes of Anthony Edwards or Donovan Mitchell, but I don't. I actually have a few guys ahead of Devin Booker right now, and I just don't know what a drop-off is. I don't know if it's something that's going on in the locker room. I don't want to say or speculate there's any problems there, but this is not the Devin Booker that we've all have grown to love, right? We got to remember a couple of years ago, we was talking about Devin Booker like, reminding us of Kobe Bryant, you know what I'm saying? And that's just...
Pump the brakes there, Perk. Reminding
that may
us
be
of...
that may be a little generous.
I like feeling
I
like Devin Booker, but there's no way in hell Kobe Bryant ever cried about getting double teamed. I'll tell you that.
He's never gonna live that down either. That's so unfortunate. He'll never leave it down. That was like his second year of the season or something. His second year in the NBA. He's never gonna live that down.
All right, let's take a look at really, because I think they missed some things here that are really going on in Phoenix. Let's get to that next. PrizePicks is the #1 independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America, but most importantly, it is a ton of fun and super easy to play. All you have to do is make 2 to 6 selections, picking more or less on some of your favorite players around the NBA. If you know ball, you can turn it into cash, and not just basketball, football, soccer, baseball, all kinds of sports you can find on PrizePicks. It's a great way to test your skills. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps, and they offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, my favorite. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. Personally, I love finding players that are on heaters and selecting less for them, assuming that they will regress to the mean. And on the flip side, I find players that are on cold streaks and assume once again that regression will hit and they will return to those normal numbers. So I smash the more button on those ones. We always appreciate it when you support the companies that help support us. So you head over to prizepicks.com. You can use the link in the description down below and then use the code Bulletin and you'll get a guaranteed $50 when you play $5. That's right, a guaranteed $50 when you play $5 for using our code Bulletin and the link in the description down below. Head over to prizepicks.com. Daily fantasy sports made easy.
Guys, make sure you use the code Bulletin as well. Like Trevor was saying, definitely helps us out. But while that ad was going, I actually did a little bit of digging on the KD piece, and I was like shocked to see this. But they have played They played 23 games. KD's played in 13 of those games. Guess their record without or with KD. How many? What do you think is their record?
So they've been without KD for 10 games.
Yeah.
Are they like 2-8 in those 10?
Basically, they are. So in the 13 games KD's played, they're 11-2.
Oh.
They basically have not won without Kevin Durant. So Bobby, I mean,
they've won 12 games on the season.
The way things are on this season, so far, Bobby is not wrong. They would be like in contention for the number 1 pick the way that they're playing so far. So that's kind of crazy.
The number 1 pick, which I don't have their draft capital in front of me, but I would have to imagine they do not have their pick this year. Wow. Now, so if we take a look at Devin Booker specifically, we look at his stats. 25, you go 25-6. That's what Devin Booker does. That's pretty normal, right? Oh, no, wait. He's only shooting 43% from the field. He's shooting 34% from 3. And here's the thing. We saw Devin Booker play great in the Olympics. That was August.
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago. We're talking about a few months ago. He was playing great in the Olympics, and now they aren't able to find success with Devin Booker on the floor. Part of it is absolutely the shooting percentages. Will there be some positive progression, whatever you want to call it? Will the numbers bounce back? I think they certainly can. But Donnie, I think there's a bigger problem here than just Devin Booker's shooting, and that's that there's a skill set overlap between their 3 guys. KD, Booker, and Beal. Each of them have the same superpower, and that's putting the ball in the basket. They might do it a little bit differently, and Kevin Durant is certainly the best of the 3 at it, but that is their base skill set for all 3 of them. I think that's a problem when you build a big 3 that all do effectively the same thing, in part because there's only one basketball, but also because defensively you wind up with all kinds of issues, which is what really shows up when you dig into their advanced metrics.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to also throw them a little bit of a bone because KD got hurt on that game versus the Suns, and he only played 16 minutes in that game. He had 13 points. They won that game. Or excuse me, I said the Suns. The Spurs, excuse me. Yeah, he got hurt in that game. So a little bit of a bone. If you want to flip that either way, it's fine. It doesn't really change a ton. But I wanted to throw them a little bit of bone with that. But yeah, so you're right. I think there is a lot of redundancy with the roster that they've put together. And I think it works fine with 2 of the 3. I think really one of the big issues here is Beal. He definitely isn't worth that contract, in my opinion, especially with the no trade clause. One of only 2 guys in the entire league with that, LeBron being the other. That's just so insane to me that he was able to leverage that. But regardless, I think that Beal has not been great for them. And I think when you've got all those guys making all that money, it really does hurt because I don't really like Bobby was saying that like they're really dependent on KD. That's to be expected when you give up a lot of the depth that you had with the previous iteration of this roster and some of those guys and you put it all into KD and you do that for a reason. I'm not really knocking that, but I think
Kevin Durant.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind that. I think that just the roster, the way it's built, they put so much into those guys because they were terrified of the CBA. And I think Beal himself has been the one that's not been great, but I do think maybe there's something to Booker specifically getting his shots in different spots, and maybe that is impacting it a little bit in his own production.
Sure.
But it's still unfortunate to see that they are playing 2 of these 3 guys pretty often, and they're not able to win the games at all. So.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, look at that, Bradley. If you are the Suns and you can somehow, some way actually swap Bradley Beal for Jimmy Butler, you are doing it in a heartbeat. Because Bradley Beal, not only does he have that pesky no trade clause, but my God, he has a player option at the end of his deal. I mean, this is, that's absolutely brutal. But I do think there's something to Booker just maybe being a little bit out of rhythm. I also think their defense is so bad that they're not getting as many transition opportunities as you would hope because defensively they're so bad. So they're not able to get out and run to the degree that they could if they were getting more stops. When we dig into the Suns themselves and just their metrics and the numbers for this team, they really struggle as expected though, but they really struggle on the defensive side of the ball. And you go take a look at this with Devin Booker on the floor right now. It's not pretty. Defensively, the Suns with Devin Booker on the floor rank in the 5th percentile on defense. I mean, that's absolutely brutal. It doesn't get much worse than that. But I think a big part of the issue, though, it's that the team just doesn't fit with the big three. Because watch what happens here. Watch what happens when we dig into the lineup data. I still think Devin, but the fact that he's producing on the glass, he's producing with the assists, I think he ultimately can bounce back.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to do something about Bradley Beal, and maybe it's just staggering their minutes. But look at the Suns right now, minus 1.2 points per 100 possessions. That's with everybody. That's with no, lineup manipulation in there at all. Watch what happens when you put Devin Booker on the court, Kevin Durant on the floor, and Bradley Beal off. Watch what happens. Plus 10 per 100 possessions. They're not just winning, they're winning handily when you have, look at that, a 3-and-D player like Royce O'Neal in the lineup. Somebody who can at least give you a little bit of defense. Look at the defensive rating, 81st percentile with Bradley Beal off the floor. It's that simple. You remove Bradley Beal from I don't think Devin Booker is really this bad. I do think the Suns have done him a disservice by adding Bradley Beal into this mix, and Yusuf Nurkic has had his problems. There's no question there. But the solution for the Suns, and it's almost impossible because he's got a no-trade clause, it's moving Bradley Beal. Get that done, and the future's going to look a lot brighter in Phoenix.
That's the hardest thing to do in the entire league.
It absolutely is.
He's got a no-trade clause.
But hell, the numbers say even if you just sat him on the bench, you're better. And nobody's going to do that. You're not going to put $50 million on the bench. But man,
I don't want to throw everything at Beal. That could be a bit unfair. Sorry, Beal fans, if you feel like it's kind of like that. But the reality is that it doesn't matter what you do. Beal has not been good for this team this year. And I think that when you look at Devin's numbers, I think that he may be a victim of all the fluctuation with the roster. They've had Beal and Durant have played 13 and 15 games, for example. That says nothing for maybe some of their other guys potentially not playing in some of these games. And Booker's played every single game this season. And so he's taking the brunt of all those losses to his advanced metrics too. So that's one of the things you have to consider, that these guys are in and out and Booker's out there every game. So that's one of the things. But, I don't want to throw everything at Beal. I think that he does some things, but it's just tricky that he makes $50 million. And I could honestly say, I think you should rather have, or if they're the Suns, they'd probably rather have $50 million split up between another 2 or 3 other guys that could be NBA rotation guys on this team and just fit in alongside their main 2 stars. And, maybe have another big out there that's useful, things like that. But I think that salary slot is, if they get rid of him, that'd be great, but I just don't know that they can do it. And I think that it's really, when Booker's out there with him, I think that that's one of the things that's really not been great for them. And that's why when you look at their lineup data, when he's off and they're putting Tyus Jones in, they're just better out there on average. So I think that does matter. I think that Book is also interesting because sometimes what I notice with Beal is he also plays the 3, which I don't like. They kind of slide Book and Beal up a position. I don't really like that, where one of those guys is playing the 3. They're redundant. They're not great defensive players. They're redundant on the offense side. I just don't like the fit there. And so the only other condition that you would have there is to put one of these guys at the point guard. But and I think Book has shown that he can do that in stretches. And there was a couple seasons where he was one of the primary guys, especially prior to CP. But I don't love Beal in that slot next to him. I think you're just better off with somebody like Ryan Dunn or like Royce O'Neal, as the numbers show you here. So I think they're in a weird spot, but that trade option is just going to hamper this team. They don't have much that they can do. So do they just make Beal their 6th man and do that? It's hard to say to do that for a $50 million player, but they might have to do that. I don't know what else they can really do here.
Yeah, it seems like that just doesn't work, and especially on the defensive side of the ball, they're just so much better when you put a plus defender out there in place of Beal. And again, it's not all on Bradley Beal, of course. He's had his his pluses and minuses, but ultimately, I think there's some flaws with this Suns roster, and it's not allowing Devin Booker to be the guy he needs to be. And part of it is Devin Booker. When we talk about value and where it comes from, Devin Booker is one of the guys where his value comes from his ability to take and make shots at a very high efficiency. He's not a 10 rebounds per game from the guard position guy. He's not at 12 assists per game, something like that, 10 assists, even 8 assists. That's not really what he is. He can give you a little bit in those categories, but it's not like if Booker has an off shooting night, it's not like you go, well, that's okay because he contributed here, and he got all these defensive stops, and he did this, and this. No, a lot of his value comes from his ability to put the ball in the basket and to do so efficiently. So if he's not shooting the ball well, that will quickly flip him into a net negative player. And you're right to note that when Durant is out, Beal is out, Booker is bearing the brunt of those negative numbers, and you would expect them to struggle built around a big three. I do think a bounce back is coming for Devin Booker, but I think the flaws in the concept of this big three will ultimately keep the Suns from being a true top-tier team in the Western Conference unless they can find some moves, and they don't really have the salaries necessary. They could move on from like a Grayson Allen. They could maybe they can get a team interested in Yusuf Nurkic or something like that. But remember, they can't aggregate salaries in a trade. So they're in a really tough spot. And I'm sure when the Suns saw that Jimmy Butler rumor and Jimmy Butler dyed his hair orange,
he would be so good for them.
I mean, the Suns right now, this would be like Christmas came early if they were able to turn Bradley Beal into. But I don't understand. If you're the Miami Heat, why the hell would you take on Bradley Beal's contract? You wouldn't. You'd be insane to do that.
Yeah, and I don't think the production statistically is like super different between Beal and Butler, but I think the fit is just insurmountably better. I think that he would be perfect out there, and I think that's one of the things that they should be trying to do. But the only way to get it done is to get Beal out there, and Beal's going to be like, no, and then the Miami Heat's going to be like, no, we don't want this either. And it's just, I don't see it happening. I think it'd be crazy. Maybe you got a third team involved with somebody that's willing to eat Beal's contract. No, never mind, because he wouldn't want to go there. So weird. Like they really just a couple years ago or last offseason, whenever it was, when they made this trade, do you think they really just shouldn't have tried to, because they did this because they were terrified of the CBA and they were like, you know what, let's just blow through it right now. We'll worry about the implications later. Yeah, they did it all right before all that stuff came into place. Do you think they should have just held firm? Because remember, Ishbia came in and he wanted to make a bunch of changes immediately. Do you think that shouldn't have went that way? Because to me, I think that really hamstrung them. Because it's just a huge, they got $150 million in guys that 2 of which are at this point playing, very few games for them or are quote unquote injury prone, if you wanted to go that far. And then the roster fit is clunky. I just don't know. So do you think that was the right decision?
So yeah, this is the problem when we look at this and this team. The new CBA is built to try to dissuade super teams from happening, right?
Yeah.
It's built, that's part of it, is to try to prevent super teams from happening. So there's some real restrictions. If you have 3 guys on max contracts, it's going to make it very, very difficult for you to build out the rest of your roster. And so that's one of the negative consequences that you're going to have to accept in putting Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant all together on the same team. But the way the CBA is built, it's much more advantageous to build a roster around 2 stars. 2 stars, depth pieces, off you go. We talked about it at the time when the Suns added their big 3, that they were going against the grain of what the NBA was wanting. And the Celtics did it too. A few other teams did it, but they were going against the grain of what the NBA was pushing for with this new collective bargaining agreement. They were trying to get away from super teams. The Suns said, they flipped the middle finger and said, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to do it anyway. We're going to take on salary. We don't care. We're doing it. And now I think the challenge is that your margin for error with your big 3 is so diminished because of the new collective bargaining agreement. It's not like, well, we can always use the taxpayer mid-level exception. We've got that to fall back on. Nope, not anymore. Can't do that to go spend. So when it comes to adding the pieces around these guys to sort of grease the wheels and make it all work, it's very difficult to do that. It's hard to make the trades that you need to in order to fit pieces together. So it puts more pressure on your big 3 from being perfect fits as is, because it's going to be hard to put the right pieces around them. And that's again, the new CBA is done to try to dissuade from teams from doing this. And I think the Suns are figuring out that it's legit. Like, it's not easy to go against the grain and what the NBA is wanting and put together 3 stars and still win, particularly if they're not a great fit together. And I think that's what's happening right now. I still think, look, they're a team nobody's going to want to see in the postseason if they've got all 3 guys healthy, and you can run Bradley Beal off the bench, and you've got all 3 guys can drop 30 plus on any given night. They're not an easy team to play against, but defensively, they've got enough drawbacks. You've got enough problems with skill set overlap that I think the Suns are seeing where, man, if instead of Bradley Beal, they had more flexibility and 2-3 extra defensive wings that you could put in, this team's probably better overall.
Yeah, I think that's really where they're kind of lacking, because even when they go to somebody like Royce, he's only like 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah.
They don't have and KD's been actually really good on the defensive end. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he still is defensively. I don't know if he has some sort of reputation, but he doesn't get talked about enough. But regardless, they don't have a lot of that perimeter size that a typical team would like to have. And I do think that's something that they probably would prefer to have. I think, we talk a lot about Beal, Booker. I think there's a few guys in this roster that are either one-way guys that are getting minutes for them, or guys that you would prefer to upgrade. But, you talked about how they had difficulties maneuvering around and putting guys around these guys. But I remember going off the offseason, I thought they had a good offseason. I thought they brought in, Tyus Jones, Mason Plumlee.
Within the restrictions, nice absolutely.
Additions. I thought they had a really good, especially as Laker fans compared to what we were able to not do. I thought they had a really good offseason, but it's just interesting to see that no matter what other like marginal pieces they put in, so much of it still goes through not only the big 3, but specifically KD. So we kind of, to tie a knot on this back to Bobby in the beginning, if KD isn't out there, this team isn't going anywhere. That's not breaking news, but regardless of what Book is doing, Beal's doing, they're really bad when KD isn't out there, period. So they need him on the floor.
I think with KD isn't out there, they're definitely not going anywhere. I think with the issues that they've got, they're not getting past the second round.
Oh, that's
with everybody healthy. That's with everybody healthy. I think they're not getting past the second round unless Kevin Durant just goes on an insane heater, because I think the issues that they have will get picked apart come playoff time by teams that don't have the kind of weaknesses that the Suns have. Very talented team, and we'll see what they can do at the trade deadline if there's some way that they can mix some things up with some very, very limited options to move. But everybody, let us know your thoughts on the Suns. Devin Booker, what the hell is happening with him? Let us know in the comment section, and go check out our latest video on the trade that broke yesterday, sending a big man, an actual trade that got done, sending a big man to the Indiana Pacers. Go check that out right now.